Hello and greetings. My name is Overseer Mukunyadze, and I hope I find you well. We've done this video to discuss a subject that I believe is very important for faith ministries at such a time as this. So in this video, we are announcing to you the financial transformation strategy for faith ministries for the next 10 years. The journey to this strategy started at the beginning of the year. We, as National Council, as we're beginning to plan for the 50th anniversary in 2026, we began to look back and we felt that it was important that we go back to finances and begin to look at what it is that God wanted to do in furthering the vision and the mission of the church. And finances came out as one of the key areas that we needed to focus on. So through the process, we prayed about it, consulted. We've come up with this 10-year financial strategy. And I'm just going to go through it and hopefully you'll understand. And I want to encourage you to take time to watch this video so that you understand everything that we're going to be discussing because it will have huge implications both at individual but also at church level. So in terms of the financial strategy, the focus is on four main pillars, which I'll go into just now. But the vision for this is ultimately what we want to achieve in the next 10 years can be summarized in Luke chapter 19, verse 16. This is the parable of the talents. And it says, "Then the servant came back and said, 'Master, your mina has earned 10 more minas.'" This is what we want to achieve in the next 10 years, where we can go back to God and say, "Lord, we have been good stewards of that which you've given us. And look, your one talent has become 10 more talents." So that is the overarching vision. So there are four main pillars, and you can summarize this financial strategy by the word RISE, R-I-S-E. So we are looking at four main pillars, which we believe that if we're able to implement the things we're implementing, we'll be able to transform faith ministries as a church in Zimbabwe and have a strong financial base and begin to see us being able to support the mission that we have that God has given us. So I'm just going to go into each pillar and explain what each pillar focuses on. So in our acronym RISE, which is R-I-S-E, we start with R. R is for resources. So one of the things that we felt is resources are important for expanding the reach of the church. If we don't focus and mobilize the resources, even the things that we would like to do, they become very difficult and we are limited in what we're able to do. So the goal on resources is to mobilize aggressively resources so that we've got centers of excellence within each zone that are able to generate additional revenue for the church. In this aspect, we want to diversify from the traditional tithes and offerings and begin to generate other income through the various resources. The goal over the next 5 years is to have 40% of the income of the church coming through the different projects that we'll be doing in our different churches. And that should increase to 60% in the next 10 years. So what must we do at church level? Then I'll also cover what it is that we are doing at national level. The thinking at every church level going forward is that when you're constructing your church buildings, when you've got a stand or you've got a building that you're constructing, you must think about a center of excellence that will generate resources for the church. So you're thinking about what community need is there where you are based, and how can we build in such a way that we are ministering to that community need in a way that allows us to generate sustainable income. So some of the key things that we are looking at is we want to build schools. We want churches to invest in schools. So as you do your building plans, think about building a school, think about building a training center, think about building a clinic, think about building a hospital, whatever the needs that you have in that particular community. That is the thinking that I would like you to have going forward so that we're able to leverage on those resources and have additional income. At a national level, the way we mobilize resources is primarily, number one, 3% of all the ministry's income will be channeled to develop this National Center of Excellence. And 3%, which is collected through the levy process, will be channeled towards that. So we have got a couple of projects that we've prioritized, which we'll start working on as we accelerate this. The first one is the Norton project. As some of you know, we have got 60 hectares in Norton where we are building a school. So some of the resources that we'll be mobilizing at national level will go to develop that boarding school. Again, we also have got a school project which is nearing completion in Zengeza. It is another project that we've also prioritized. So the money that we collect through that 3% will go into developing that school. We've got other various school projects like also in Sunningdale, which is something that we're working on. And then we're also doing other projects where we're also transforming existing structures so that there's a commercial side to those existing structures without obviously impeding on the current model of the church that is there. So we are looking at a project at BCC where we're going to have a shopping complex there as well as Center Church. So those are the main projects that we're going to be focusing on at national level, just to develop those resource bases so that we're able to have more income for the church that would drive church growth going forward. So that is the R in the acronym RISE in terms of our financial strategy. The next is I, which really represents investments. Here we are talking about building a sustainable financial future. So one of the key things which is important is that as a church, we must also begin to invest in commercial assets and build wealth for the next generation. So we're talking about the church that will live in the next 50 years. We must have investment, a portfolio of investments where we are able to finance the future of the church. That is going to be our legacy to the next generation. So to support this, this will be much more focused at a national level. To support this, we are launching what we call the Faith Ministries Endowment Fund, which becomes a cornerstone for us building an investment portfolio. How an endowment fund works is that whatever capital you contribute into the endowment fund, that capital is locked into the fund permanently, so you cannot use it. What you then use is the income that is generated from that capital. So what it means is, let's say we put in 20,000 into the endowment fund as capital or donated capital. The 20,000 is permanently there, we'll never use it. But what we then use is the interest or the dividend or whatever return that is earned on that 20,000. That is what will be available for the church. So what it means is that the endowment fund will continue to grow without being depleted and will enjoy the returns that we're able to generate out of that fund. Our ambitious goal here is to invest into a portfolio, into a fund that is 5 million in the next 10 years. So with assets value of 5 million. How are we going to mobilize the resources for this fund? 2% of the income that we collect from through levies will be channeled towards the endowment fund. So that 2% which you're putting and looking in there will not be touched, it will not be used, and that becomes the seed capital that we're using. We'll also then have various activities that we'll do to mobilize more resources for the endowment fund. Now, I just want to make a very important point is that the way the endowment fund is going to be managed, it's going to be set up as a separate fund with the governance structure which is separate from the church, and to be professionally run with a professional management company that will be appointed. So the structure is going to really be independent of the church, because we want to make sure that it is professionally run and professionally administered so that it's sustainable going into the future. So that is what we're going to do in terms of the I, which is in investment. Then I go to the S, which is stewardship. Stewardship is very important because God is calling us to a place like I said before, even with the theme verse that we're looking at, is that God is looking us to be good stewards of the resources that He's given us. And for us to be good stewards, it starts with the resources that God has given us. So we are looking at a high level of stewardship with the resources that God has given us. So this is not going to matter whether you are a new church that is planted, whether you're an old church, you're a small church, you're a big church. The level of stewardship should be the same. We should have a higher level of stewardship in terms of transparency and accountability as it relates to church finances. So I want to speak about a couple of things under stewardship which are important, and including the things that we're expecting to do. So the first one is levies. Levies are very important when we pay levies to the national office. These levies are important to make sure that the national office expenses are covered. We've got no other income source for the national office except the money that comes through levies. Also, the contributions as a church, we are affiliated to FMI, Faith Ministries International. We are affiliated to Salt and Light. We are affiliated to Inuka. We are affiliated to EFZ. So those levies allows us to pay our dues as it relates to those affiliations. But also, through the national office, we also pay salaries for overseers. We pay salaries for the bishops. We also pay salaries for our rural pastors. So all rural pastors are paid from the national office. We also pay for pastors for newly planted congregations. So this is the money that each church contributes as levies. That is what it pays. I just thought it's important for me to explain what that money is going to be used for. So from a policy point of view, the expectation is that every congregation, on the core income, which are tithes and offerings that you collect, 20% of that is remitted to the national office on a weekly basis as levies. So you are not allowed to spend that money. You're not allowed to defray. That money should be remitted promptly to the national office. And we expect that every congregation, regardless of what stage you are at, you must contribute that amount into the national office. Then on top of that, if the church has got other projects that are going, maybe you're running a project, it could be a school, it could be any other project, 10% income from that project should also be paid as levies. That is the policy position. Incomes where levy is not paid is, for example, you collect money for a specific reason. It could be for building, so you don't pay levy on that. Or someone comes and donates money for a specific purpose. That money we don't collect levy on that. But so it's important that we expect that every congregation is faithful when it comes to levies. So I'm still talking about stewardship, and the first thing that we spoke about here is to do with levies. The second thing is about enhancing transparency. So one of the key things that we found is that a lot of churches are not being faithful and transparent with their finances. So what we're doing is that we're going to release out, which we're finalizing. We're working on updating our Faith Ministries financial handbook. And no one will be allowed to handle church finances unless they've been trained on that Faith Ministries financial handbook. So this applies to elders in charge of finance, finance chairpersons, administrators. We'll roll out the training beginning of next year, 2025, and no one will be allowed to handle church finances until they are certified that they've gone through that training on the financial handbook. So these are some of the provisions that we have as it relates to stewardship, which we expect. So in principle, in terms of the way we tithe, this is how we're going to finance zonal operations. So in terms of the way we expect around how tithes are managed, the expectation is that National Council members, they tithe directly to the national office. Then all pastors within the zone, they'll tithe directly to the zonal office. So the tithes that the pastors bring to the zonal office will provide resources for the zones to operate. As you know, there are certain operations that are also at zonal level. Most zones, we encourage them to have administrators, and we also encourage that the zonal overseer is also visit different churches. So that money is needed to finance that. So these policies, we do not want to give you any exceptions. So they're going to apply to every congregation. Now, I know in some congregations, some would say if you take out maybe the tithes that the pastor is paying and you put it into the zone, it will cripple the operations of that church. So the point here is, and the response to that is that every church, we've put all churches into zones, and every church is not the responsibility financially. It's not just the responsibility of the pastor or for one or two people. It is a collective responsibility that is shared in the zone. So if there is a church which is really struggling financially, through the zonal overseers, we then the zones then come together and say, how do we assist each congregation? So we're not going to do exemptions around pastors not tied into the zone because their tithe is needed in the local church. But what we are saying is that the zone then takes responsibility of making sure that each church is financially healthy. So that talks to the S in terms of our strategy. Remember, we're talking about RISE. Then the last one is E, which is empowerment, which is essentially equipping church members for economic success. We appreciate the times, the difficult times that we are living in economically, but we think that as a church we have a responsibility to begin to teach and disciple our church members for economic prosperity. So some of the things that we're going to be doing to empower the different church members is, number one, so as I said earlier, as we're really talking about what we needed to do as a church, one of the key aspects was revisiting the foundations of the church and our core beliefs as it relates to finances. So as National Council, we developed 8, which we call foundational principles on finances. So we've got 8 principles, which are foundational principles on finances, which we'll be sharing with you, which we believe form the cornerstone and shapes the belief of every Christian as it relates to finances. So that is the first thing that we have done. We're going to be releasing those principles. But on top of that, we'll also be launching a specialist discipleship track on finances, which is based on those foundational principles. So as you know, we've got the 4 tracks through our discipleship program. So this is going to be an additional specialist track, which we think anyone should be able to do as long as you've completed the new life in Christ. So at any point in your discipleship journey, as long as you've completed new life in Christ, you can then do this discipleship track, which teaches and allows discipleship to happen as it relates to finances. So that's the first thing that we have done, to say people should, our beliefs, our convictions as it relates to finances should be in the right place. So we're going to achieve that through discipleship. Then over and above that, we're also putting together programs that help empowerment. So we will be launching trainings around entrepreneurship, around career mapping, and related things. And we're going to empower and strengthen and capacitate. Ebenezer has got a function that looks at that looks at poverty alleviation and also capacitation, training capacitation in the various skills. So we're going to be capacitating Ebenezer to be able to do more interventions as it relates to that training and equipping. We also have got the Joseph Revolving Fund, which is a fund that we have been running for the past couple of years, I think since 2020. We're going to capitalize that even more so that more church members are able to access loans at concessionary rates for the various projects that they're doing. So there you have it. That is our financial transformation strategy from 2025 until 2035, which we believe will bring about significant financial transformation, not just to the church, but also to all the church members. And I hope you receive it and you implement it, as you have said. If you've got any questions, I will be able to respond to any questions you have. You can ask your zonal overseers. If they're not able to assist you, you can also come to the national office. You can get hold of General Secretary, Overseer Chitene, or even myself. I'll be able to assist you if you've got any clarifications that you need. But more importantly, let's embrace this and let's run together with this. Thank you very much.